it does take practice. It does take time. It won't happen in year one of business or in episode one of your podcast, but try to be as much as of yourself as you can.
Welcome back to Systems with Laura, the podcast where we break down what it really takes to grow a service-based business with better processes, smarter tools, and more ease. This episode of Systems with Laura is brought to you by Proprium, business workflow and automation agency. If you're building a service-based business and you're overwhelmed by operations, automations, or choosing the right tools, this is exactly what Proprium helps with. Proprium builds systems that help you save time, reduce repetitive work, and scale without chaos. Learn more at proprium.agency. Today's guest is Anja Lordanić Mustać, a Croatian podcasting mentor and founder of Studio 22. Anja is best known as the host of the Freelance Business Unlocked podcast, where she speaks with freelancers and small business owners about everything from marketing to financial systems. And in this episode, we're diving into the systems behind launching and maintaining a podcast as a service-based entrepreneur, how Anja transitioned from translation to podcasting, and why podcasting might be one of the most powerful visibility tools for small business owners today. If you've been thinking about starting a podcast or want to get more strategic with the one you already have, you'll love this conversation. Let's dive in. Welcome, Anja.
Hi, Laura. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for saying yes. And I also have to emphasize that everything that I said in the intro is basically how I've met you, and you've helped me with my own podcast. So I'm really happy that you are one of the guests. And I think that we're going to be able to kind of translate that to people who are listening and who want to start a podcast. So my first question would be, after everything you've done in business, you had one day where you decided, I'm going to start a podcast, and then you turned this into your business. Can you walk us through how that looked like and why you came to that conclusion and decision for yourself?
Yes, it's a very interesting story, I think, because as with most people in business, some things come your way unexpectedly. So this is what happened with me. And I share this story a couple of times here and there in my newsletter and in my posts on LinkedIn, but I will try to be brief with this one so we can get to the meat of the episode. So I first started listening to podcasts around 2018 or 2019, and that is when I realized I gravitate the most toward those business podcasts. So I would soak in marketing advice. I started learning about newsletters, digital marketing, how to create a sustainable online business. And I have to say, at this point, I already had my translation business, which I did from home. So it was a sort of a quote unquote online business already. But those business podcasts kind of planted the seed in my mind and made me realize, okay, if all of these people can have their own podcasts and they're all vastly different from one another, they have different viewpoints, some of them even have different political views or different familial situations. So some of them are parents, some of them are not. I like this diversity. And at that point, I realized, okay, I can add something to this mix. Maybe I could launch my own podcast. And this was back in 2021. And then I approached one of my colleagues, my translator colleagues, and I asked him some firsthand podcasting advice because he had his own podcast in Croatian at that time. And then he said, will you join me? Will you be my co-host? And I said yes. I was kind of frightened, but I said yes anyway. And we ended up being co-hosts for 2 years. We recorded virtually every week in Croatian, and it was such a great experience. I enjoyed it so much, and I learned a lot, both from the technical side, from the creative side, from the system side, which we will get into. So what's the most interesting about this story is that I call those 2 years, well, I was a co-host, I call those years my productive procrastination years, because during that time, I still didn't have my own podcast. I was taken under someone else's wing, and I'm really grateful to that colleague. But I still didn't have the courage to launch my own. So I feel like I kind of needed that period. I needed that time to practice that skill, and it is still a work in progress, of course. And then in October 2023, I finally launched my own podcast, and I haven't looked back since. So it's been going on for I don't know, over 100 weeks at this point. So there is 100-ish episodes, and we can get into the schedule and everything else later. So I'm still not officially at 100 episodes because there are some replays in there. And yeah, we can talk more about that later. But I'm 2 years in, and I'm really happy about that journey. And now let me quickly share the story about me helping others launch their podcasts. So it was kind of a natural progression. While I recorded my episodes, I simultaneously promoted them. People started noticing that I have a podcast, and they started asking me questions, started asking me how they can do it as well. So that is basically the story in a nutshell. And I realized there is something there, and maybe we can kind of dig into it, expand on it more, help others. And yeah, this is where I am today.
So I love that story, and I love how you, even though you were doing a podcast, you still call it productive procrastination because it still wasn't what you wanted to do in the first place, if that makes sense. But you kind of got to that, and somebody could say, looking outside, they could say, "But you were a podcaster back then." How did you realize that this is not what I actually wanted, even though it was a pleasant experience?
Well, I actually always knew that I wanted to have my own podcast. And this reminds me of my experience as an employee. So I was traditionally employed for not even 2 years. I think it was 18 months. But even before then, before I got my first real job, I knew that I wanted to have something on my own. So I hope none of my bosses will hear this, but if they do, it's okay. And it's the same thing with the podcast. So I enjoyed being a co-host. I enjoyed being like kind of second in line, or like a vice president, so to speak, because it was his podcast, and he was the one who was in charge completely. And I was the one pitching in creative ideas. I was the one showing up and sharing my, I don't know, my side of the story, depending on the episode topic. So I knew that I wanted to have my own, but this was kind of like, as I said, procrastination, but it was good kind of procrastination. And this is where I would like to share a tip for your audience, if you don't mind. So you don't really have to go all in with whatever you're trying out, with whatever you want to experiment with. You can try to record a couple of mock episodes if you want to launch a podcast someday. You can record a couple of mock episodes yourself or with a co-host to see if there is any chemistry. And then you can try to go with the real thing once you feel like you're ready. Or go ahead and publish something when you don't feel 100% ready. You can get there even if you can publish something even if you're 80% there. So yeah, that's my first tip.
I love that tip because I remember we were talking about that when I reached out to you. You made it seem so normal. The fears, the doubts that you have, the what if this, what if that, and you made it kind of feel like fun. And I do think it is fun. And I remember it took me so long to decide to do this. What will anybody think? Who will listen? What if I say something wrong? What if I offend somebody? What if something happens? And then it turned out to be this hobby that I love. hopefully, it will turn into something later on. But I'm just 13 episodes in, you're episode 14. And I learned so much. And when I was preparing for our conversation, I had to check a little bit of some statistics, and you probably are fully aware of this. And basically, I'm just going to read it. Fewer than 1% of podcasts reach episode 70, which is very surprising to me when I found that out. Basically, the majority of podcasts struggle to remain active past 20 episodes. And basically only a small fraction continue beyond 50 episodes, and less than 1% achieve 70 episodes or more. So when you think about how many people do podcasts in the world, and there's so many in 2025, less than 1% stays active. Why do you think that is?
Well, there are multiple factors at play, but first of all, I think people overestimate themselves, or they bite off more than they can chew. And I'm not here to judge at all, because I've done this in many facets of my life. I've overestimated myself and I quit so many things in life. So this is just me stating the facts, and something I've seen even in people even before they launch. So they try to find those excuses, or they try to explain to themselves why this isn't a good idea, even though deep down they know they have a story and a message to share. So I think it is difficult to keep up with a schedule, especially a weekly schedule when it comes to podcasting, if you don't know why you're doing it. So you told me multiple times, I'm doing this as a hobby. I enjoy this very much, and we will see what will happen later down the line. And I think that's a perfectly valid reason for you to keep going or to miss out on certain weeks. For example, in my case, I want to be as consistent as possible, and I'm happy to report that I haven't missed a single week in 2 years, because I want to set an example. Maybe I'm too harsh on myself with this one, but if I want to teach others how to do it, how to stay consistent, and that kind of consistency can take on many different forms. You can be creatively consistent, and we can talk about that more if you would like. So I wanted to set an example, and I wanted someone who is my future client, my prospect, who approaches me to see what I've been doing behind the scenes, to check out my podcast, not necessarily listen to episodes, but to see an episode list and say to themselves, okay, she's the one who will teach me how to be consistent.
When you say consistency, does that mean necessarily that you have to record weekly, or do you have a strategy around that?
Well, you will be happy to hear that there is a system for everything.
And
And
I
I'm
had
not
that feeling.
necessarily I'm not necessarily a huge systems person, but I do have a couple that serve me very well. So what I always say to anyone who will listen to me when it comes to recording in advance or batch recording, you can set yourself up for success very easily. You can allot a couple of hours each week and record multiple episodes, and have, for example, record 4 episodes that week, solo or interview, depending on the goal and on the type of your show. And you have 1 month worth of episodes in the bank. And that is extremely valuable. So you can always come back to those 4 episodes and use them when you need them. And I will try to be realistic, because your question was, do you need to record every week? Ideally, yes, you will record 1 episode each week. But when I mention batch recording, this is something you will have on the side as a backup. And that way you won't fall off the tracks that easily, especially if you decide that podcasting is your priority, whether it's a hobby, it's a client acquisition mechanism, whether it's for lead nurturing, marketing efforts, it doesn't really matter. If podcasting is your priority, then you will do everything that is realistic for you and your schedule to keep up with it on a weekly or on a monthly basis. You set up the system and the schedule yourself, depending on what you want out of it.
If today's episode makes you realize your tools are not supporting your business, Proprium builds systems in tools like Airtable, SmartSuite, ClickUp, HubSpot, Make, Zapier, and many more. Proprium's team maps your processes, builds your workflows, automates your tasks, and trains your team. If you want systems done properly, visit proprium.agency. I love how you describe that, because that's what I learned from you also, and that's what I do. So, for example, this week I'm recording 3 podcasts, but they will all be out, week by week. They won't be basically going at the same time. Even though sometimes I just want to like skip the line and there are some episodes that I just want to put like at the same time, but I learned to control myself and to have a system. Even though I am a systems person, but sometimes there are so many things that kind of become exciting in a conversation. And to me, this is just like, we're drinking coffee together. It's not an obligation. And I think that it really depends on the person when they enter what they want to do, how they kind of see it. If they see it as an obligation or they see it as something scary, they're kind of going against themselves. And I think that having a mentor, just like you had a conversation with me, is basically going to help you kind of think about, okay, how will I stay consistent? What is this for me? Because while it is a business tool, like you mentioned, and that's true, but for you to kind of stay, inside of this mindset and be able to record even when you don't feel like it, and when you're tired or you're sick or something's happening in your life, I think it really depends on the purpose that you have with this, basically. So how do you usually approach different clients? Because every person is different, and I'm pretty sure the purpose, is different with everybody that you talk to. So how does how do coaching calls, how does your approach to helping others with their podcast start, and how does it usually look like?
I really like meeting clients where they're at, or prospects. It doesn't really matter, because whenever someone hears this is what would work for you and for your schedule, or ditch this, you don't need to do this, they feel more at ease. And this is something, a kind of approach I like myself. So I like it when someone listens to me, when someone hears my story and what my schedule looks like, and that I have 2 young kids. Then it is not realistic for me to do everything all at once. So this is how I try to approach my clients as well. And that puts them at ease, especially when I tell them you don't need to publish weekly. You can publish bi-weekly or once a month, but try to be consistent with what you are doing. So nothing is going to happen if you miss a week or if you miss a month, but it is best for you and for your business goals. And later on, what is interesting, it becomes muscle memory. It's kind of a non-negotiable. It really quickly becomes part of your routine, part of your normal part of your calendar, of your day. And as you said, it becomes more fun, and it is not something you need to tick off from your to-do list. So when it comes to my prospects and clients, I always ask them what their schedule looks like. And what's interesting, if someone says, I have a busy family life, that means that we need to streamline or systematize the process, the podcasting process in this case, as much as we can. So we need something that will be easy, doable, simple, not exhausting, and something that will be tailor-made to that particular person and their schedule and their situation. So I hope this answers your question.
So you caught my attention with, you have to systematize the process.
Yes.
Because people kind of think that's basically against creativity. So if we systematize something, then I can't be creative. There are, kind of like, you can't do this, you can't do that. And it's actually not true. I always love to say to people, especially my clients in particular, that if we have a system, we have it for things that we don't want to think about. So, I don't want to, for example, you're not going to wash all of your clothes every day and then dry it and then choose what you're wearing. It's going to be ready in your wardrobe and then you pick it out, right? So that's a system. And that doesn't mean you won't choose clothes by your current mood or what you prefer or by the occasion. It just means it's ready for you to choose. And that's what I mean also by systems. And I feel that you approach it the same way. So we're not stifling creativity. We're just creating things that are stuff that's repeatable so you can, do what you're best at. How do you approach it?
Right. We're basically making room for creativity by systematizing things that require a lot of our brain mental energy if we don't systematize them. Yeah. So whenever we put off those menial tasks aside to focus on creative work, we're doing ourselves a favor. So some people, I've also seen this somewhere, that someone blocks off the time in their calendar for creative work. And I haven't tried this myself because a lot of creative thoughts pop up for me in the shower or during walks. So I can't really schedule those, even though I have to be fair, I haven't tried it, but it sounds like a good idea.
Well, I can tell you that I do that, and it's the best thing I ever did for myself because I have Wednesday completely blocked off as my creative day. That doesn't mean I'm really creative, if that makes sense. Like when something pops up in my head, it's always like I'm cooking, I'm in a shower, I'm on a walk, just like you. And then I just like write it down in my notes app. And then on Wednesdays, I have it blocked off, not because I think I'm going to be creative, but because I can have it as my non-negotiable time with others, if that makes sense. And like people know that they can't book a call with me on Wednesday. It's always blocked off. So it can happen that I don't feel as creative that day and I can't do what I wanted to do. And I maybe write my blog post on a Friday. That's completely okay. But, the fact that nobody should be able to contact me during that time helps much more for me to make stuff that I want to do. And that's when I do most of my batch, filming for my YouTube channel, or I try to schedule my interviews on Wednesdays mostly. But when you have guests, you understand that you can sometimes like make them do that. We're recording this on a Thursday because life is life, but it works for me, honestly. I'm really happy about it. I recommend it because then the distractions basically keep away. That's the goal. It's not I'll schedule creativity. I hope that helps and you try it. Yeah.
Right. I'm really curious. So can you take a couple of minutes to explain what those Wednesdays look like if you're not feeling particularly creative, but you have those notes somewhere?
Yeah. So then I consume content. That's the other thing that I told myself. So like if I can't be creative, I'll just hunt for ideas. So I either watch somebody else's podcast or I read a book or I go for a walk. So I try to do stuff that's still creative, but it's not my creativity in particular. And that helps me because I don't feel like I missed a day, but like I recharge and then I get ideas. And then basically I either write at 11 p.m., or I just create some notes for something else, or I get an idea for some other thing, or I basically decide I feel much more productive today. I'm just going to do some work, but I try not to schedule calls. And I am an extrovert. I love people, but I feel like my productivity drops when I talk to people every day. So like I can have 10 hours of calls. I can do few podcasts at the same day. Not a problem. I can do few hours of them. But if I don't have like a buffer day in between, then I get burnt out. So took me 7+ years of business to kind of figure that out. But like now on Mondays and Fridays, I don't have meetings. I do admin work and I do strategic work for my company. And then Tuesdays and Thursdays are basically the only days I accept meetings unless it's really urgent. But that's all. And then Wednesday is in the middle of the week because I feel like after Monday, starts everything that's the most productive happens, let's say on Tuesday. And then Wednesday is more of I slow down and I do this. And Thursday, we figure stuff out together as a team. Friday we prepare for the next week. And it really works for me because took me few years of tracking my tasks, for example, and I time track a lot. I try to see what I'm working on, what's the breakdown of, not to make myself faster or anything like that, but just to be like, okay, so this week we spent, most of the time as a team on project this, and we should have done that, or, schedule change, and that's all normal. And then I realized at some point I am not at my best if I accept a call with a client or a team on Monday, because I try to have my weekends full to myself, and then I just have a plan, what I'm going to do next week and all of that. But I like to, like, Monday morning everybody's rushing, the phone is ringing, everybody's back at their desk, and it's just like chaos. So I try to turn it all off, and I basically just, 8 a.m. to noon, I just do admin stuff. And then I'm ready, like, let's talk later if we have to, or let's schedule it for tomorrow when it's less chaotic. And it started working, basically. I don't, like, my team members, they want to have calls in between them on Monday, they do that. But to me, kind of works better. Yeah, personally.
I'm so happy you said that, because I was just about to say I really like your system, but I don't think it would work for me.
For
And
sure.
at the same moment, you mentioned your team members who aren't really on board with your system, and they don't really have to be, even though you work on the same team, even though you're basically co-workers, whether it's virtual or in person. And the same goes with podcasting. Whenever I suggest like something in general in my newsletter or on LinkedIn, I have to be general. I have to present multiple options or say what's been working for me or for some of my prospects and clients. But you can take away bits and pieces and apply, or try to apply, something that speaks to you, and keep applying and keep kind of practicing what fits in with your schedule the most. So that is
Yeah.
the point of systems, and you know this best. So you need to kind of experiment with yourself. You need to get to know yourself. As ironic as that sounds, I'm still getting to know myself, and my schedule keeps on changing, season after season, baby after baby. So I need to adjust to all of those situations, and everyone has to as well.
I agree fully with you. And I just want to emphasize, this is the ideal week for me. There are times when you can't do that. So you have a small baby at home, 2 months old. You can't have that. Like, if you have a huge project, you can't have that. So there are things that happen, I think, seasonally in your life where you have to adapt to that. But then few months later, you can have 6 months of this ideal kind of work. And I love that. But when we have a project or something happens in life, I adapt. So I do sometimes still work 16-hour days. I will probably do that a lot because I'm a business owner. But there are some times when I can do one day for 4 hours, one day for 6 hours, etc. I just try to kind of put, I think, priorities for those days. And then it doesn't matter if I do this in 1 hour or in 10 hours. It really is just, this is the goal. But then there are also days when you don't feel like it. So for me, that's 80% successful, honestly. And then when I see that we just are not going to be able to do that at all, we make a new system for that month until we figure it out. Especially when I have new team members, I can't just say to 5 people we added to the team, don't call me on Monday. They're learning, they need to adapt. So when we have onboarding and it takes few weeks for everybody to get on board and be part of the team, I'm not gonna use that rule like that, if that makes sense. So yeah, we have to be flexible. And I think it's the same with podcasts. But something else popped into my mind, because you're actually doing podcast consulting while having a podcast. And I'm wondering for you, how what kind of feeling it is to consult and then to be the host. So, like, is it the same feeling, or is that two different approaches, thinking and doing? What do you think about that? How does it work?
Those are two completely different personas, and someone may disagree with me. I don't know, but when I record or when I plan out or draft and record podcast episodes, whether it's interview or solo, I feel like those two are different personas or, as you said, different approaches. Well, of course, you schedule or plan out your episode differently if you have a guest versus when you're recording solo. So I would say, in a nutshell, I feel more creative or more laid back when I record podcast episodes. It's like this playful version of me comes out. And when I'm consulting people, I try to be more organized, strategic, straightforward, and as helpful as possible. So, because I don't want to, I have this weird fear of not wanting to waste anyone's time or desperately wanting to bring value and be concrete. So when it comes to podcasting, like recording and publishing episodes, I allow myself to be a bit more playful, but it's still a work in progress because it's a skill that you need to keep working on and keep refining for months and years.
I fully agree with you. And I thought that it's going to be much easier for me because I'm a consultant. I do this, as my day job. And I feel like when I'm in my consultant hat, I am being a detective. I'm basically trying to get out of the person what they actually want and like hash it out, and we solve it, and we do the troubleshooting there. And then when I'm being the host, maybe this will sound weird, but like I feel like this I don't know, this kid version of me that I used to be when I was like 5 or 6, and I would just ask people, why is the sky blue, why is this, why is that? And like I feel I reconnected with my younger self when I'm doing the podcast, because I don't know if I could get you, for 2 hours and pick your brain unless you were my guest, right? So
Right.
at the same time, I'm kind of like satisfying my curiosity, looking behind the scenes in people's businesses and all of that, because I love to geek out about it. And at the same time, like I'm actually giving value to somebody, just like you said, because the best podcasts that I love to listen, they make me feel like I'm part of the conversation, like I'm in the room with them. For example, I don't know how you think about it, and maybe what are your favorite podcasts, if you can give us a few examples, but also how do you feel about this, and how do you kind of approach it?
For the record, you could get me for 2 hours, even if
I
we
know,
weren't recording,
but
just so you know.
generally, not every guest.
Right. This is our tool. This is how we get
Yeah.
people in. This is our sneaky way of getting smart people on the platform and asking them questions. This reminds me of my toddler daughter, who keeps on asking why until I run out of answers. And after 20 whys, I'm like, I already told you everything I know. I'm done. I don't know the answer to this kind of why.
You probably
So
question your own knowledge after the 20th time. You're like, why is this actually? I don't know.
uh, right. And by the way, I'm also impressed with like the amount of answers I provided her. So yeah, it depends on
And
how you look at it, but I try
that's
to be
without
honest.
chat GPT, I would assume.
Yes,
That's
on the
amazing.
spot.
That's amazing.
um, so your question was what are some of my favorite podcasts and how I feel while listening to some of them. So what I appreciate the most about other podcast hosts is transparency. I'm naturally drawn to people who are transparent and down to earth, who don't sugarcoat things. And I don't mean like those flashy titles, this is my $1 million mistake. Like, tell me something that you did this past week that you regret, that you would have done differently, or I appreciate them sharing the lesson they've learned. So uh, it's really corny, but I think all of those are lessons, and I'm not necessarily sorry that I made some of the mistakes I've made. I wouldn't take most of them back at all because they have shaped me. And if it weren't for them, my trajectory would have looked different, probably. And the same goes with those podcast hosts I listen to. And a lot of them are wildly successful and 100 steps ahead of me, but still there are some of them who are so grounded and who are a joy to listen to. So, for example, Ed Gandia is one of those. He has this very, it helps that his voice is very soothing and that his approach is very, I would say, soft and sympathetic. And recently I listened to one of his episodes where he uh, essentially roasted a LinkedIn post made by a lady. I forgot her name, but the topic was AI. And you know, this topic is very controversial nowadays. And he kind of roasted that post, but in the most respectful way ever. So even if that author was to stumble upon his episode, she would probably be thankful and she would probably reach out and continue the quote unquote debate in the DMs, but in a respectful and civilized way. And I really like it when people aren't polarizing or argumentative for just for the sake of it. I like it when people show off, aren't afraid to voice different opinions or unpopular opinions, or to stand their ground, but when they do so respectfully. So this is what I like the most about hosts in general and people, of course, in general, with whom I come in contact. So when it comes to podcast hosts, I don't try to necessarily emulate their behavior. I try to see what I like, what I'm naturally drawn towards, and then I realize, okay, whenever I'm recording, I want to sound like myself. I want to not be afraid to voice my own opinions, even if they might be unpopular. Because at the beginning, and I'm sure you've been there before, even when you're starting your own business or a podcast, you're naturally more guarded and you're afraid to tell what you really think. But when you realize you can do so respectfully, and this is a skill my own mother has perfected, I think, and I really like hearing her tips on this. So yeah, it does take practice. It does take time. It won't happen in year one of business or in episode one of your podcast, but try to be as much as of yourself as you can. I'm trying to avoid the word authentic because it is being thrown around a lot, but I'm sure you know what I mean.
I fully agree. And it took me like 7 years of business to start feeling, fully in my
Like
shoes.
you.
Yeah, fully. Um, I think it kind of takes a little bit of reality slapping you, honestly, to kind of like remove the people pleasing and the filters that you have sometimes. Because when you are, like you said, in the, I would say, cycles where you have failure, where you have things that will turn into regrets later, but not something that we would change and not do. I think that kind of makes you okay. So the worst scenario happened, basically, and I still like let's give it an example. Not even an example, let me explain it better. So when you're afraid this will happen if I voice my opinion, and then you don't do it and still something bad happens, then you're like, well, now I went through that situation, why not just be me, basically? Because people will both not like and like when you are trying to kind of adapt to them, so they'll still have an opinion on that. And like, why not just be happy in your own skin and then let them have an opinion? So I think it takes a little while, because when I didn't work for somebody else, like you did for 2 years. I was insane. I just, out of university, I got my master's degree. A few months later, I just like started my business. And
Congrats.
I am I always say thank you. I always say like, there's this commercial. I don't know if this is still like, if you can still find it, but like the Kool-Aid guy, when he jumps through the wall, you know that commercial, for, it's like an American drink, basically.
I don't, but I can
Yeah,
visualize
so he just, like, this pitcher of juice, he jumps through the wall. I just feel like that's me. And then I figure out,
Right.
okay, maybe we should have just like sat down. And even though I'm a systems person, like systematize this. But like I do believe in sometimes jumping off a cliff and making a parachute on the way down. Do not recommend
Mm.
that if you want to not cry as much in the background, you know. So if you if you're okay with tears, go for it. But sometimes it won't work. Like it's not 100% strategy. So you know, when you get older and you get a little smarter, you get into your 30s, because I started this when I was 26, then you're like, cool, that's all nice, but like how can we prevent problems? So I think it becomes a mix of that. And then it took me just 7 years to be like, you know, I can say what I think because I have that opinion for a reason. My life experience and my perception of things got me to this point, but I'm open for another opinion without any problem. And that's when I realized like it's okay to have the podcast, because I don't have to kind of change myself in order for people to kind of like what I have to say, because my goal is not to make anybody angry. It's just, you know, here is Anya. This is her experience. Here is me. This is my experience. And if you like it, great. If you don't, you know, there may be other topics and other podcasts for you, and that's also okay. So that's kind of how I see it. How do you, since you did mention the regrets and all of that, how do you approach your own regrets, and what are some of the biggest regrets that you had in business and in podcasting so far?
That's a really huge question, and I will probably come up with a better answer in the shower this evening.
We
But
can
the
change
first
it in
thing,
the edits if you want to come back tomorrow.
right,
Just tell me the answer.
you will hear the shower noise in the background.
Leave me a
I will
voice
record the
note and
voice
we'll just
memo.
edit it in.
Right, exactly. It will be organic, as they say. So, jokes aside, the first thing that comes to mind is not starting earlier. And I know that is what a lot of people say, but this is like your experience in a nutshell, what you described a couple of minutes ago. So, whenever you feel afraid to showcase your true self, especially online, which is very, very difficult for most people, there are a couple of exceptions who feel natural in front of the camera or in front of the mic, but for most of us, like regular mortals, it takes a while to get accustomed to. So if you don't embrace yourself and decide to showcase it fully, or like um, around the your own, you need to have your own boundaries, is what I'm trying to say. So if you don't voice your opinions online, if you're not ready to speak up and be different from most people, or show off your quirks, and then you will keep procrastinating. You will stop yourself from future opportunities, and opportunities will come your way if you decide to go out there and get a little bit out of your comfort zone and make that first step, as we said before, when you're 80% ready or 70% ready and not 100% ready. So that is my experience. And I was lucky enough to have a co host for 2 years, to be taken under someone else's wing and have that experience. But if this experience of mine sounds speaks to you, you can create it for yourself. It doesn't last as long as it did in my case or in someone else's case. So this story is similar to what people say when starting a newsletter or starting their own business or leaving their toxic relationship or something else along those lines. So just think about what you're missing out on if you don't start out now. Just try to think of that regret now and reverse engineer it, and you will be more ready to act right now, even though you don't feel ready. So I hope this helps someone.
I fully agree with that. And I feel like, you know, give yourself permission to try out small, just like you said, record a few episodes, you know, listen to it, put it out there, then see what happens. And I remember, like, I did the first episode with Edita. Shout out to Edita. And then basically I was like thinking this was not the way I expected it. It was easy. It was fun. It felt right. She was amazing. The whole conversation was great. And my bias before that was, what will she think? She's my first guest. I don't even have an episode to show her. I don't know how it's gonna look like. What will she say? Will she say yes? Then when we put the episode out, like, is it edited enough? Is it good enough? Did I do it correctly? Did I not do it correctly? I was worried about so many things, basically. And it took me a few years. I was thinking about starting a podcast because I love podcasts. I listen to them. I watch them. Like, one of my favorite YouTube channels I started watching in 2014, basically. So it's been on my mind. And I remember when I was a kid, I played like radio hosts with my friend. We were in like primary school, and back then, we're so old, Anja, you're gonna remember this, but when you had to when you had to listen to the radio and then record a song on the cassette that you wanted to have for yourself or a disc, basically. So Gen Z left this conversation right now, basically.
Yes.
And then when something went wrong, you had to take a pencil and put the cassette back so you can listen to it. So the biggest invention back then to me was the voice recorder, and we were pretending that we are radio hosts. So we were like playing with that. And I was just thinking, nobody heard those episodes of my first podcast, but how do I do this professional? Like, do I do that? Do I not do that? And I was like thinking about it for a while. Do I have a co-host? Not have a co-host? And I'm trying to kind of like illustrate this, because whoever is going to listen to this, they're going to probably have similar doubts, and then they should come to you so you help them with that. But they need to sit down and be like, this is much less scarier than I'm making it out. So everything I was afraid of, nobody thought of, literally. So I was thinking about the name. Will people think it's, silly? Will somebody laugh at it and stuff like that? And then I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna put it out there. And I remember it was like Saturday morning, and I just like took the YouTube channel reservation. Then I took the Spotify reservation account. Then I created my Apple Music account. Then I just like made it. And then I was like, oh my God, this is terrifying. And then I didn't do anything for a few days. And it took me a while to be like, but then what do I do? So I went into productive procrastination. Which tool do I use? What do I do? How do I this? How do I that? And I decided I'm going to start talking to people, and I'm going to tell them about this. And if they say they're interested, I'll try it, and then we'll see. And I was thinking, who is going to be my guests? How do I find guests? So like, what do I do? So you think that you don't have a list, and then you just like start. And in 10 minutes, I had a list of 30 names. Then I was like, oh my God, what do I do? And then I was like, hey, Edita, I'm going to tag her. I was like, so we had a conversation, and then she said yes. And I was like, she must be insane. But I know her, so she's not. So like, okay, let's just pretend that she took the correct choice. And then we did it. And I was like, I was worrying for nothing, because I did it. And then a few episodes in, people told me it sounds very natural, and I had fun. And then it started building. And then I tried another thing that you can also comment on, because it can be helpful to others. I used my Instagram account, and my Instagram account is also in English. And I don't have a lot of followers, because I just used it, at that time it was April of this year, and I had very small amount of people. And I just started looking for people who are interesting to me, who are basically people that I want to talk to. And I DM'd a few entrepreneurs, and I asked them, hey, I do this. I started a podcast. Do you want to have a short conversation? I think we would have, a great fit. And few people said yes. And I think my third episode was somebody that I just met basically over Instagram, and she's a coach, and we clicked on a call, and we had an amazing episode together. So it's just when you dip your toe and then you dip a little bit more, just like when you're entering sea and it's a little bit cold, then you're just like, I'm just gonna swim, and then you just do it. And then nobody can tell you not to do it, because now you're having fun. It's good. You know, if a cramp hits you because the sea is a little bit cold still, you just shake it off and you just like get back and you do it. So
Mm.
that's my process. For example, how does it look for your clients usually? Is everybody paranoid like this? What do you do?
I just want to say that I really like your story, and I want to continue with this
Hmm.
sea metaphor for a second, because it is so much easier to build on top of something, anything you have made as your foundation. And the next time you try to experiment with something podcast wise, you're
Yeah.
ready to jump straight in instead of dipping your toe, because now it is familiar. And this new experiment or test of yours will be um, just another shot at something new, but you will be ready to jump right in because you've created this foundation. And when it comes to my clients, I have a different um, I have a variety of people who come to me, because some of them are basically ready, let's dive in, I just need your help. Others are like, I need hand holding, I need accountability, because I know that this has potential, but I just need someone to keep me accountable. And there are some who are still lurking, like kind of in the background, checking out my posts or sending emails, asking questions, being a bit shy. And I see a lot of potential in those as well. Now, this doesn't have to mean that every single one of them will launch a podcast, because we know that it has many moving parts, first in your mind and then in reality, like technically and logistics wise. But I really like to share with people what you said earlier. It can be fun, it can be easy, and it does get easier with time. And another thing that you reminded me of a couple of minutes ago, which I really want to share, is that when I said that I'm 2 years in and that I haven't missed a week, this has been a journey that hasn't been linear for me. So those 100-ish episodes, as I said, some of them are replays, most of them are interview episodes. But how I started is not where I am now. So let me just quickly walk you through the timeline, just to showcase that you can do this as well. You don't need to have like this perfect brand. Not everything has to be consistent for 2 years, nor it is natural for it to be. So when I first launched my podcast in October 2023, I started recording solo episodes in Croatian. So at first I recorded, I think, 15 episodes in Croatian, because that is where I felt the most comfortable. So I spoke my mother language, and the only audience I had was in the Balkans, which is only natural. And then I knew I wanted to expand my audience, my reach, so to speak. And then I started recording in English, but I didn't feel ready to record uh, solo episodes in English at that time. So I resorted to interview episodes, because, as you said before, I wanted to pick experts' brains and learn something from them directly, to have them for an hour or 90 minutes and share that with the world, and kind of have my own platform to decide whom I will invite, whose pitch I will accept, and so forth. So this is what I'm trying to say. I recorded, I think, over 50. I think I should have checked beforehand, but I think 60 interview episodes. And then I was like, okay, it is time to use this platform for my own benefit, even though those episodes did benefit me. And I met so many amazing people. I've conducted many awesome interviews. I learned a lot, and I kept on brushing up on this skill. But I felt like it was time for me to start recording solo episodes in English. So as you can tell from this timeline, there is a natural progression. I did what I felt comfortable doing at every stage, or I should correct myself, I was 70 or 80% ready at every stage, and I decided to go for it. And now when I'm recording solo episodes in English, I no longer think about what people will think of me or my accent or my opinions or my voice. I I publish those episodes, and wait for my people to come, for my people to give me feedback and to tell me what they enjoyed, what they didn't enjoy. And I'm always receptive to criticism because I think that's how we all grow. And when I say I wait for my people to come to me, this doesn't mean that I hit publish and then I walk away from my computer. I promote those episodes on LinkedIn in my newsletter. I promote them in person when there is a chance. So you need to work on your marketing, of course. But I digress. What I'm trying to say is that you can stay in your lane and stay in your comfort zone for so long. You need to step outside of it just a bit, just so you will, because this way you will see progress, you will experience progress, and you will see firsthand that these kinds of experiments, even though they might seem huge to you, they're micro experiments, they will grow into something bigger, and they will help you grow more confident in yourself, in your skills, and you will be ready to jump in front of a mic with someone like Laura and feel at ease and feel confident and feel ready. And it will not be something that you, as I said, tick off your to-do list. It will be something that is enjoyable. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk.
Thank you for having your TED Talk inside of this platform. I kind of feel when I'm reading your LinkedIn post for the last few months, at least, that I'm, watching carefully what you put out and all of that and learning from you, that you most often talk about that building in public type of thing. And I think people don't understand that this is a conversation. And for me, why podcasting is so interesting as a listener, not just as a podcast host now, is that I feel that people who I listen to show me the real them, basically, and I can then make an impression. I can figure out what I like, what I don't like, what I can learn, what I cannot take away from that, what I agree or disagree with. And it feels like this mature concept of basically showcasing your expertise, having a conversation. People can get to know your personality, which you can't in a scripted interview or in a 5-minute video that you do with somebody else, but like they can feel you through the screen if they're watching. So I think that really ties into what you're saying. But it also ties into, do people watch podcasts or do they listen to them? Because that's also something that's very important for me. That's how I kind of get the impression. And I didn't know until I talked to Anja, and I had a mentorship call, that actually 60% of people only listen to audio. I was so sure that like everybody does it like I do, and they just like put the YouTube podcast on and they just look at people having a conversation. So it's also important, I think, to remove your biases, not just before you started, but also when you started. Just like you said, you don't just put out an episode and then you just like let it, exist in the world. You do certain steps. So we covered a lot about how you can start, how you can, remove the fear, the doubt, and all of that. But when you do start, I think the next step, at least for me, was to not put myself to be the decision maker of what my listener might want, and make everything in the way that I would be the one that listens to the podcast. I am somebody that's part of the audience of somebody else, but like when it comes to my podcast, I need to think about what my audience would also prefer. So then I remember when you gently told me, like, put your audio episodes, don't just do the video. Like, you can do both, and you can do your YouTube channel and all that, but like keep in mind that people are listening to this, not watching. So what do you think about those instances, and how do you approach that after you started, you're doing it, you don't no longer have fear? The next obstacles like this are what?
I just wanted to get back to your thoughts and opinions on YouTube, and go back to our consulting call that we had, because you mentioned that you publish your episodes on YouTube and not on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and so on, which didn't make sense at all for me. So I said to you, okay, you can publish those audio files, you have them anyway. So why not publish them on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and other podcasting platforms? It will take a couple of minutes of your time. So this is just to create some context for people listening. And when it comes to YouTube, I vividly hear, and those voices keep bouncing around my head lately. I hear those experts and marketing people in general talking about how podcasters should get on YouTube. I hear them, but I have not yet applied that advice. And I don't feel like I'm ready to apply it, because I'm a one woman show. I do everything myself. And I don't want to have my podcast feel like a burden. So I'm comfortable with audio. And by the way, I recorded all of my interviews. I recorded those as video as well. So I do have them somewhere laying around. But I'm not ready to introduce yet another task, and YouTube is a huge task. And some would say you can simply upload those videos, but I want to be intentional. Uh, I want to create valuable content, and what do I mean by that? Whenever I edit or clip out some of my audio files, it takes some time. And I guess the process is similar with video files. And I'm not that familiar with YouTube as a creator. I am as a consumer. So I don't feel ready yet, but I did commend you for going on YouTube immediately. I think that's a great move. And I will definitely look into that for the future because I think YouTube for podcasters is another like step forward in our journey.
I just want to clarify for the listeners, because you know what we're talking about, but your advice was so valuable, because I didn't look at all of my content as it's coming from the same person. It's all podcasts in a way. I looked at it in a way in two ways, in two kind of lanes, basically. So one was I started a YouTube channel where it's a talking head video and I talk about business. And it's edited completely different. It's scripted most of the time because I prepare much stricter notes for that, because it's going to be pre-recorded video. This is also pre-recorded, but it's not edited heavily. And I didn't look at that as my channel of podcasting in a way. I went with, this is my YouTube channel. It's completely different rules, just like you said. And I didn't put it on the platforms for podcasting. And then the podcast itself, to me, was the interviews. I didn't think of podcasting as this is also a podcast. This is kind of building my expertise. And what Anja showed me and explained when we had a call was, to me, mind-blowing, because I didn't look at it that way. And then you said, I listened to some of your YouTube videos. That should be on Apple. That should be on Spotify, etc. And I couldn't compute at that moment. I was like, two different categories. Why would you? And then I remember I was so shocked, because I was like, but that makes full sense. Like, why did I do that to myself? Because now I'm doing double the work. So if I put it as additional part of the podcast, or as the podcast itself, doesn't matter. It's different. So I listened to your advice. I prepared the MP3 files. It will go soon as additional kind of channel because I wanted to kind of still divide them, but also keep them as a podcast, because I feel that when I do those, it's just me and my opinion, and I can, talk about the topics that I want in a way that kind of works for me, basically just like mini lessons. And then the podcast is more a mutual conversation. So I still divide them, but they're basically the same thing, just like you said. So I'm kind of wondering, when we say podcasting, like, how do you look at that broad topic? Because to me, those were two different categories, and you educated me that they're not. Basically, if you want to show your expertise, take a microphone and start showing it, basically help people. So how do you approach that yourself and with clients, especially because you were a co-host, then you interviewed people, now you're doing more solo episodes? Why? What's better for you?
Well, for me personally or in general?
I would say both, in terms of like what do you prefer and what gives you most results related to your business.
Well, I would say I'm one of those lucky ones who has experience in all all types of podcasting virtually. So, as you know, I was a co-host, and then I started recording solo episodes in my mother language. Then I started recording interview episodes in my second language, and now I record solo episodes in English. So this latter category is the newest, the latest one for me. So I don't have like solid data for that yet. And since, as you noted, I gave birth recently, I put out a couple of replay episodes, which I don't feel guilty about, because I'm just uh, I decided that I'm shining the spotlight on them again, because people don't listen to all of your episodes. People don't tune in every week, but I was consistent every week. And now I gave myself a buffer. So I did publish like 4 replay episodes in a row, which I haven't done yet ever. So I think actually, I'm certain that the most business results, if we're talking about podcasting as a business tool, they do come from solo episodes, because as you said, you're the one showcasing your expertise and sharing your wisdom and your knowledge and your tips in your own voice. Having said that, I think bringing on interview people for interview episodes, if there, for example, here are some ideas which I need to implement myself. Case studies, for example, even competitors, your peers, if those episodes make sense and align with the overall business ecosystem you've created for yourself, you're creating goodwill, and you're virtually creating video testimonials for yourself. And people are happy to report great results. As you said before, I mean, thank you for that. You've recorded multiple testimonials in this episode alone. Um,
We can clip it out, don't worry, you can use it.
awesome. I will take advantage of that. Thanks. So, yeah, there are many ways to be creative in podcasting and still get business results out of it. And I do get this is not a business result per se, but lately I've been receiving a lot of pitches for guest interviews via email. And I'm currently not accepting guest requests, but this is also a proof that people are finding my podcast, finding my show. And it is especially interesting to see those pitches and to look at them in a way that showcases what not to do, how not to pitch. Because you mentioned earlier how you pitched our mutual friend Edita, and she said yes immediately. And I'm sure you made your message personalized. You were
Yes.
speaking like a human and not like an AI agent. And I'm sure you didn't send like the same DM or the same email to those 30 people on your list. And here's where I would take it a step further. Speaking of pitches, I mean, I keep on digressing, but this is all I think it will be helpful.
That's where we have enough time. Don't worry, just go ahead. I love when people
Um,
do that. I'm just writing down, so it's very
Awesome.
interesting. Go ahead.
I
Yeah.
mean, you've heard this tip from me before, but some people may not have. This is something that people like the most when it comes to, I would say, even pitching to be a guest or asking someone to be a guest on your show. It is to send voice messages. it is so simple. And on LinkedIn, it takes 1 minute because they are restricted to 1 minute. I mean, of course, you can send multiple voice messages, but try to keep it brief and follow the 1 minute rule on LinkedIn. And people really like receiving those because they're tailor made just for them. They can hear your voice. They can, as you said before, feel, get the gist of who you are as a person, what you sound like. Are you approachable? Are you well spoken? Does this person feel friendly? And they can get an impression of what the experience of working with you on the show, it doesn't matter who is in which role, what it will look like. And so the benefits are multifold, and it can all take 1 minute. And of course, you can prepare beforehand, and you can think about what kind of message you would like to send. I usually like to mention one thing that will let them know that I follow them, I admire them, or I really like what they do. So you can refer back to some of the old podcast episodes they've done. Maybe they created an article or a post on LinkedIn or a newsletter that you really like. So you can always find that one detail that will let them know, okay, this person really does want me on their show, or really does want to be on my show. I can tell that they are really human. And all it takes is one voice message.
And I fully agree. When somebody emails you and they say, hi, Laura, we found you on YouTube and we found your expertise to be interesting. Would you want to blah, blah, blah? I'm like, kind of
Right.
doubt. You know, I work with a lot of software. This feels like personalized, CRM sequence that you put me into. Please don't do that. And I'm not saying I never did those, because when you're learning sales, especially, like, you think it's a numbers game. I would send out emails also that would be completely not personal, that were really sounding robotic even before ChatGPT, and then you just learn. And I think the best way you learn is you don't get any answers to that. So then you have to sit down and be like, why isn't anybody replying? Let's try this, let's try that. And then you figure that out. And I think that with approaching people with a voice message, or just asking them to be on your podcast in that way, it kind of it's different. It was different to me, because then I was thinking, who can I like have a conversation with? And not even like, do I like your position on things or stuff like that? Not those, but like, do we click? Can we have a conversation? Because there were some people that I had a conversation with and I had to carry the conversation. I ask you a question, then I get one word, and what do I do
Right.
with that? So I don't think that to me the criteria is not even are we aligned and stuff. It's, can we carry a conversation for a while? Because I do believe that in long podcasts the personality shows. I am not one of those that think like, a 10-minute episode is enough. And I think that I'm in lesser percentage of people, because everybody has different preferences. But my kind of preference is like, I just want to get to know the person. Let's talk for longer periods of time. Because I also pick my books like that. And this is gonna sound also silly, because I know we don't agree on that, and that's the value of things, because both can be true at the same time. Is that my criteria when I was university, high school, would be the longer the book, the better it is. And that's not true. But that's how I picked out books, and that's how I stumbled upon Twilight and similar books. And then you realize it is 400 pages, but you read it in an afternoon. It was fun, but is it up there with some certain books that I've read? It's not. So you learn from that. So I think that people do have biases, and I think that if you show up as a human, just like you said, they're gonna listen to you more, rather than you just treating them as a number, or you just trying to get some LinkedIn followers or anything like that. I think that's what we need the most, and that's what we respond the most
I just
to.
wanted to take a moment to reflect on what you said about longer podcasts versus 10-minute podcast episodes and so on, because as you said, both can be true at the same time. And various people will enjoy one or the other or both, depending on their circumstances and where they're listening from. So, for example, some people only listen to podcasts when they're commuting and their commute is 20 or 30 minutes long. Some people listen to podcasts while they're cooking, while they're jogging. So, it all requires different episode lengths. So this doesn't have to mean that your 5 minute bite-sized podcast episode doesn't have room in any of those schedules. Quite the contrary, people are different. But what I wanted to say is that your Laura, your podcast episodes are much longer, and they're kind of those deep dives and getting to know the person you're interviewing, and people get to know you as the host and as the person. So those serve one purpose, and those, for example, 10 or 20-minute podcast episodes serve a different purpose. They're usually much more actionable and to the point, and this is something I realize I enjoy recording. So as I said before, I like to get straight to the point, and I noticed in myself that when it comes to speaking in my second language, which is English, I'm not that well versed in storytelling. This is also a skill I'm trying to work on. So in Croatian, of course, I can spend 20 minutes telling a single story, but in English, I kind of condense it much more. And I need to also work on that skill, not only storytelling, but getting out of my comfort zone and realizing I'm not bugging people. Those who want to listen will stay and will keep listening. But again, I digress. I enjoy recording and listening to 10-minute or even 5-minute podcast episodes. This is something that was brought to my attention by one of my podcasting friends, whose name is Slobodan Manic. I also had him on my podcast. He has recorded, I think, over 250 podcast episodes so far, and he resorted to 10-minute podcast interview episodes, believe it or not. So he asked his guests one single question, and they agree on that question beforehand. He asked them one question, and then they answer it, and it takes them, I don't know, a couple of minutes, and then he has additional questions, and they do talk about that topic for 10 minutes, but they start with one question, and after 10 minutes the interview is over. And it is so to the point, and it is so interesting because his guests tend to get straight to the point very quickly and share their most valuable ideas that way. So not every podcast needs to be a deep dive, and not every podcast needs to be a 10-minute interview. But I just wanted to showcase those different examples because whoever is listening to this and thinking of launching their own podcast probably has inside their head, okay, I need to record either solo or interview episodes. But as we said 10 times so far, you can be as creative as you'd like, and you can create a hybrid of what we just shared today. So you can play around, you can be creative, you can be your most playful self, even if you're using podcasting as a business tool. So yeah, this is a long-winded answer.
I fully agree on that. And I think it's the matter of perception also, because while I did say that, and I still think that, and I agree with you, then you have my YouTube episodes that are 10 minutes, 6 minutes, so it's the matter of perception, because to me, until you pointed that out, I didn't consider that a podcast, because my personal definition was a podcast has to be 2 or 3 hours long, etc., etc. And then YouTube by default to me was short, to the point, a lesson, stuff that I watch and listen to when I want advice, when I want, like you said, actionable steps. And then only until you pointed it out when we had a conversation, I realized that it's the same thing. I just put it in 2 different categories, so I am doing what you're saying, but I'm not considering it a podcast. So
Right.
I think that from me, the message would be challenge yourself and challenge your biases, basically, because when we had a conversation, you kept saying put your podcast on the voice channels, and I kept, but my podcast is on the voice, it is on Apple. And you said yes, the interviews were on Apple, and I said, but my
Um,
YouTube is not a podcast. So I think that the message here is also that you can, kind of create your own problems and be your own enemy. Even when you start doing this, you can still like be, thinking certain stuff that other people don't perceive as such. So two things are true at the same time. It's just how you label it, and it really depends on what you kind of consider and what you want to do. And that's why I think another one testimonial here, you have to talk to mentors like Anja, for example, because I needed to get out of my own perspective to be like, okay, this makes full sense, right? So I saw you wrote down something. Do you want to add maybe?
I wrote down your message, challenge your biases,
Yeah.
because I completely agree with that. And we are sometimes so stuck in our own bubble that we don't see the obvious. And as mentors on the other side, sometimes we feel like things that we keep on saying are so obvious and that everybody knows it. And then we undermine ourselves and don't market our services enough because we think that what we do is so simple and so obvious. So I just share two different perspectives. So this is sometimes how I feel as a mentor. And on the other hand, as a student, when someone points out something so obvious to me, it clicks right then and there in that moment. But it took me some time, months or years or experiences that got me to this point to be ready to receive that kind of information at that time, even though it was planted somewhere in my mind. But yeah, I just think that we need to be, like, generally speaking, open minded, both as professionals and as students. So those are two different personas. But if you are open minded and, as you said, ready to take criticism and ready to be proven wrong, in that way you will grow as a human. So you summed it up perfectly in 3 words. So challenge your biases. It sounds very simple, but I believe a lot of us struggle with that.
No, we think that our thoughts are like facts, and they're not, and we basically don't understand that our like experience in life shapes our perception of things. And took me years, to figure that out, because the most stubborn people are always right fully, and that's it, and that's not true. And in our example that we talked about during our call, it took me like 30 minutes to figure out what you're aiming at, because you were so clear and I wasn't ready to listen.
Mm.
So I was thinking, but I have it on Apple. I don't understand, what is this lady talking about?
Right.
you
And
know
the same is with me and
yeah.
YouTube. I know I quote unquote need to have it, and I'm a podcasting mentor, but I'm not fully ready to get inside the YouTube realm. But I'm fully aware, or at least I'm 90% aware of the benefits. But I'm
Yeah.
also semi aware of the work I need to put in. So that is what's stopping me, just to be fully
I
transparent.
I fully agree with that, and I have to say openly, I have a team. I jumped into
Mm.
both because I have a team. I didn't edit a single episode of this. Shout out to Thea. I hope you leave this in editing. Don't
Hi.
edit
Yeah.
yourself out. Thank you, Thea. Thea did the editing. Vedrana did the editing. Shout out to Vedrana. We're gonna tag both of them because Vedrana helped me with my YouTube channel. And she's our marketing partner. She has her own company. I really wanna, shout out to her because she did a lot of work with working with me on this and convincing me how to approach it. Install TikTok also because I'm a millennial and I was against that. That's a whole other episode. But Thea then took over the podcast, and Vedrina took over the YouTube channel. I didn't edit anything. So
Mm.
I gave them full full hands. You can do whatever you want, and I trust them. So I would be hesitant if I were you also, because it is easy because I have a team. I just,
Mm.
I take my microphone, I click record, and I yap, and then they do the magic. So
Yeah. Oh, that's the most fun. That's the fun part.
that's why it's still fun. I didn't do any of those. I check the intro, outro, and I'm like, I don't like this. Can you make the logo bigger? And then they're like, no,
Uh,
you're getting this.
yeah.
So yeah, joke
Oh,
aside. Yeah.
and by the way, I just wanted to point something out. As most people listening are one person show,
Yeah.
there is something charming and endearing about
Yeah.
doing everything yourself for a while,
Yeah.
because not only are you learning certain skills, but you also are aware of every part of the process, which after a while you might or might not hand off to someone else. So
Yeah.
it is, I think, important to be aware of what each part of the process looks like. And that way you will cherish this project more. So I'm really proud of my podcast, and I'm proud of everything I've learned along the way, and of the fact that I have been doing it myself. But
Yeah.
I do want to get to the stage where you are, to have a team to just yap, and then have someone else do the rest, who enjoys that part of the process, but who would never get behind the mic, for example. So I just wanted to say that it is a process. It is not easy and simple, but it can get easy and simple. You just need to find ways to make it so from the very beginning. So that is, I think, my biggest piece of advice. If it is a priority, if it is a non-negotiable for you, if it is a business tool, then you can and you will find ways to make things easy and create foundations that serve you well and that you can build on top of later.
So I fully agree with this. I recommend what you said as a better approach than mine. I didn't do that because I felt like I'm gonna give up if I do it. And this
Mm.
is the part when you kind of know yourself well, because if I stopped and I did that, I would start nitpicking. I am very,
Mhm.
very critical of myself and all of that. And I just needed a way to just keep the momentum, just do it. And then my goal was, after 50 episodes or more, sit down and then figure out, basically. So my approach was like, I just want to get them out, get them out, get them out,
Yes.
basically, and then reflect back on it. But what you're suggesting for the podcast is what I suggest to entrepreneurs in their business. So when I systemize their business, I always try to get them to do something for the first few times on their own, because you can't delegate unless you did it. You can't assess quality unless you tried. Especially when you have a product, or when you have a service, you have to do at least few of those alone, so you can then delegate. So the same thing, I agree with that advice. The only thing is that I felt like, since we had a marketing team, let me use that and let me go
Right.
basically against my own, because I would quit, honestly. My kind of reasoning was, I do a lot of consulting calls with different clients. We do a lot of projects. I'm talking every day. And then when I open Zoom and we are on the online meeting, I have to start talking. There are no redos, if that makes sense. So I said to myself, if I can do that and I don't get nervous anymore before those, I'm going to do these, and that's going to be my tactic. So it really, I think it depends on what will help you not quit. And I'm type of the person, if I slow down and I start overthinking it, I would kind of quit. So I think your advice is there for 90% of the people. Don't do what I did.
What you said is super interesting, because both of us had the same goal, but we got there through different means.
Yeah.
And I was also thinking, like, I just need to get them out, of course, to the highest standard possible at that
Yeah.
time. I just need to get those episodes out, go through the first year of podcasting and see where it takes me. So this is what helped me, this attitude helped me uh, be less perfectionist, like to tone down my perfectionist tendencies, So that is a plus. And when it comes to you, you had a marketing team already, so why not use them so that my perfectionist tendencies don't get in the way? So we had the same goal, but we
We
had
got
different
there.
circumstances.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I definitely agree with that. And I also have to emphasize, for example, we did the first episode. We did not know what we were doing. I told you
Mm,
before the recording. So we did the episode. We lost the episode almost.
yes.
None of the people in my team basically ever had any podcasting experience, editing a podcast, none of that. So I sat down with everybody and I was like, so do you guys want to have some fun? Like, whatever we do, whatever happens, let's just try it out. Like, no stress, basically. And we don't work on weekends or anything like that. And I remember when we lost the episodes, I got it back because there was a glitch of a technical nature, so we couldn't download it. Then the support team helped us in the software. And then when Thea edited it, the first episode ever, this is, I don't remember the tool, but like Adobe Premiere, I think that she used, it didn't let the episode export. And it was like almost Sunday. And I said, we're going to release it on Monday at 6 p.m. And then it was just Sunday morning and she just calls me and she's like, I don't know what we're going to do. So we all jumped on Zoom, and we don't work on weekends, and everybody felt like this was so important for us as a team to do. So people just joined in when they saw messages that were not supposed to be on the call. It was just supposed to be the two of us, but people just like clicked on the link because they saw it on their phone. And we were just thinking, what do we do? Do we, release part of the episode? So we pretend that it's part 1 and part 2, etc. And it was so nerve-wracking. And then she figured it out, and then we posted it. And then I realized what you mentioned already about batching episodes. So my idea was like, I record, she edits, we put it out there basically every week, 6 p.m. sharp, it goes out. And then I realized if this keeps happening, if something happens, I have to have a buffer between episodes. We have to record few, have them ready in the queue. And just to shorten the story, I didn't know how to enter the information into YouTube. How do we post an Apple podcast at all? So we didn't know anything. So the conversation was, we're just going to do this. Editor said yes, so let's then figure it out. And that's how we learned, because I know myself, I am a perfectionist. If I started with more preparation, I would go, on a course, how to edit a video, how to do this, and then it wouldn't work. And my biggest kind of, what got me to do that approach was the YouTubers and podcasters that I listen to. They always, after a certain amount of episodes, they always kind of go back and they retell the story of their first recording. And for example, the Diary of a CEO, if I'm not mistaken, and I didn't mix it up, they recorded in a kitchen of Stephen Bartlett, and his parents needed kitchen for, to make meals later. So they had to like take down everything and then put it back every time. So I remember hearing that story, and if I got it wrong, I apologize, but things like that. And then people taking their iPhone for their first YouTube video and just like, recording what they say. And then, for example, Alex Hormozy and how his videos looked like in the beginning, for example, before he had followers. So my goal was like, nobody's going to listen to this. It's going to take some time to build it up. And then I can just like play with it. And if we make mistakes, it's fine because nobody will see it. People watch it. But, I wasn't expecting that. But like, that's what made it less pressure. I don't know if that helps anybody, but that's what made it fun. And when we had some hiccups in editing or anything like that, I always say like, do the best you can, because then we can either, like you said, re-release the episode later. We can do something else with it or anything like that. But I don't want that pressure of this being too professional, because in my opinion, again, a bias, this doesn't have to be true. I need at least 100 episodes until I can say, well, this is what works and this is what I like. And then another number of episodes basically until I can make a system out of this. It's Wild West before that, right? And and it's just us having fun. So who knows what happens? But when I said I'm gonna do this, like you, I said I'm doing this for the long run. And even if I have like this in seasons, just like I'm trying kind of not to go every week and all of that. Even if I have it in seasons, I just want it to go, and see which life of its own is it gonna get. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
This was so great to hear, because you're telling a realistic story. You're painting a vivid picture of life that does happen and that will happen. And I think that whoever listens to the end of this episode will feel comforted, will feel kind of ready to start at least thinking about whether it is launching a podcast or starting this new project they've been thinking about for the past couple of years. Because all it takes is baby steps, number one. And number two, no first iteration of anything is perfect. Number three, nobody cares at the beginning, probably. Number four, it is charming to build in public. And number five, the more human you are, the less AI like you are, which attracts real humans back to you.
I think you summed it perfectly. I don't have anything to add other than this is a perfect clip
Awesome.
later on to share. But as you can see, I'm thinking in editing,
Yes.
even though I don't edit. But I think you summed it perfectly for the ending of our conversation today. And I just wanted to ask you for, the last few minutes, where can people find you? How can they work with you? Why would they work with you? And basically, how do they learn from you?
Well, why would they work with me? I think you said it like on multiple occasions. So thank you for all of those testimonials. So I will not try to pitch myself here. I would just invite everyone to join me or to connect with me on LinkedIn, and we can start any kind of conversation over there. And if you're interested, you can check out my podcast, Freelance Business Unlocked, and you can check out the entire trajectory. So if Croatian is not your first language, you will notice the first 15 episodes being in Croatian and then later on in English. So this podcast is a true kind of reflection of my journey, and it showcases that it doesn't have to be perfect and it doesn't have to be linear. So yes, LinkedIn and my podcast. And thank you, Laura, for having me.
Thank you so much for saying yes, Anja, because I was scared you're gonna say no.
Wow.
But that's before I got to know you better. Basically, you were this person I admired, and then we got into conversation, and now we're here. So I'm really grateful for that. And I'll do the pitch for you. So if you really want to start your podcast, call Anja. Don't wait, because you're just gonna think and make it the bigger nightmare than it actually is. And she's empathetic. She listens. She knows strategy. She understands you. And the things that you could battle for months, she can solve in like 30 minutes. Or she gives you money back,
Thank you so much, Laura. You're very
Not
kind.
true, the last part. I don't want to get sued by you. So it was just a joke. For legal purposes, that was a joke. Okay.
No worries. We're friends forever, Laura. You can't mess this
There you
up.
go. And
Thank
we're
you
going to
so
have a part 2 because we had to make this shorter, hour and 45 minutes. So yeah, we're gonna do this again.
Yeah, we kept
and
it brief. This is a shorty episode. Yeah.
this is my 10 minute this is my 10-minute episode with Tanya. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Your commute is now over. You have arrived at your
That's the whole
destination.
podcast. Thank
Talk to
you. Thank
soon.
you.
Thank you.
Well, that's it for today's episode of Systems with Laura. I really hope you had fun, because we had a lot of fun. And a huge thank you to Anja for sharing her insights on podcasting, business pivots, and building authority through audio and also video, coming soon to YouTube, hopefully after this. Basically, if you're curious about starting your own podcast or want expert guidance, go follow Anja on LinkedIn and check out Freelance Business Unlocked. It's packed with practical advice for freelancers and solopreneurs. And of course, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with someone who's really ready to stop overthinking and start creating. Until next time, experiment, learn, and grow. If you enjoy conversations like this, you'll love the Proprium Digital Network. It's a community where digital service founders get tools, templates, weekly insights, and behind the scenes guidance on building systems the right way. If you want to stop building systems alone and start building with support, join us at proprium.agency.